Hi everyone, I'm Alex Lamb, Chief Exec of Lanterne Rouge and your host here today on The Real Work. I'm an organisational psychologist and a professional coach, and I'm personally interested in how careers work. Our mission here is to open access to career success and workplace belonging for everyone through these community conversations. We want to learn and share what drives our personal decisions and how we define and shape our work environments. The Real Work explores how we show up for each other in all manner of professions, unpacking the experiences that shape us and how we can each play a role in designing our future of work. So my guest today is Bohie Palacek. For the past 10 years, Bohie has been practicing as a commercial and public artist, creating street art, commercial murals, and traditional signwriting fit-outs with a clear focus on handcrafted typography. She has led large-scale street art projects with brands like Westfield, Uber, and the University of Canberra, and she also runs street art workshops. Her illustrations have featured on clothing labels in Australia, the US, Canada, and the UK, and her art has exhibited in solo and group shows internationally. Her artwork explores identity, mental health, and connection to nature as a means of support through difficult times, which is why she's here with us today. Bohie is passionate about creating authentic connections in the public sphere. She's won several awards for excellence, and she champions sensitivity within the realm of public advertising, challenging the digital quick fix with deeply considered analog decisions and designs. She is a strong advocate for women supporting women, conservation of the natural environment, and positive psychology. So Bohie currently creates street art and mural painting workshops in Canberra alongside her fine art practice from her off-the-grid studio, which I love the sound of, on the outskirts of Braidwood, New South Wales, Australia. So beautiful bio. Welcome, Bohie. We're really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I've actually got a gift for you. Our last guest, Vaughan, offered you this golden nugget. So I said I would pass it forward. He said, have fun doing the interview. Oh, yeah. So that's the gift. Exactly. Thanks, Vaughan. He was a pleasure to interview. So I guess just to start out, like the work you do as a sole trader and an artist is just so varied, as we've heard from that bio. And some people would see it as very brave to be independent and working across such a diverse portfolio where you're really self-governing and taking your own direction. So how would you describe the pros and the cons of that working lifestyle that you have?
It has been complicated to try to explain what I do to people. There's a long list of skills, and they all seem just as valid as each other to me. There's different moods that I'm in where I really go for months at a time, where I really want to focus on one and harness that, and then having the ability to sort of pivot and explore another avenue and another medium for another year or another 6 months or, you know, another decade is pretty exciting. So I do think that it's been brave, but it's also come from a journey full of twists and turns where I've just navigating my path, kind of rolling with what's been available to me at the time. As far as mentors, like, you know, what skills I'm learning and where I'm traveling and picking up skills. So just picking things up along the way.
So it makes me think of like
quivers in my bows in my quiver, arrows in my quiver.
That's good. Yeah, arrows in your quiver. I was going to say, for some other people, they say, you know, I've notched up a couple of scars, but it's bows in the quiver is a much nicer metaphor. Just because it's like positive things as well as the tough things, I guess, that create those experiences that we emerge from. It sounds like you're kind of responding to opportunities and feeling your way forward. So with like bravery, when we use that word, it's brave, having a portfolio and kind of navigating your own path forward. You're not in a traditional organizational structure where somebody's telling you what the next steps are. With that bravery, I think a lot of people perceive it as coming with some vulnerability as well, of like, how do I make these choices and am I out in the wind? So how does that come through for like people in your position of, you know, the emotion of making the decisions for your career?
Yeah, that was a big realization for me about 5 years ago. I felt very overwhelmed by this realization that no one had been doing what I had done before. You know, there really weren't people that I could, especially women, that I could sort of talk to and follow in their footsteps. I started thinking about sort of weaving the ladder as I climbed it, you know, like it became this very visceral experience of being, yes, the freedom of being able to choose which step to take forward, but the overwhelming kind of anxiety of what is it going to be, and is it a reliable step, I suppose, and having to build up the resilience that sometimes it hasn't been reliable and it hasn't worked out, but finding the courage to just keep moving forward anyway.
Yeah. And so what are the elements, like, I believe you've mentioned mentors. I know you've talked about this, like one foot in front of the other on a ladder. What do you find, like, when you're are you aware when you're at a crossroad, or when you're at a moment where you're having to find courage, or is it something that you're kind of more aware of the resources that you use in retrospect to get through it?
I was talking to a friend about this last week, who was also commenting on courage and bravery in my path. Like, the more he learned about my path, the more he was sort of blown away at my ability to roll with the punches and to keep moving forward, even through adversity. He's a professional BMX rider and won the X Games and is like throwing his body around off buildings and up into the air. You know, you talk about courage and bravery
and scars.
We realized together really that courage comes from fear. It doesn't feel like a safe space. To come to a crossroads where you have to go out into the unknown is a really scary place to be. You have to leave the familiar and the safe and just launch yourself out into a really, really vulnerable space. And leading up to those moments feels very frightening. It feels like I'm not, for me personally, it's like something doesn't feel right. I'm not on the right path, or that path has run its course, and I have to keep bettering myself, or like learning or moving somewhere new, because I'm not satisfied here anymore. It's not serving me anymore. So it's not like a feeling of, I've arrived and I'm here. Wow, cool. Now I'm going to take the next step. It's like, okay, I've been working towards this for 3 years and now I'm here and I don't want to be here anymore. And what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? This isn't how I thought it would feel. I've achieved my goal, and now by the time I'm here, I've actually got new ones and I need to start working towards those now.
Yeah. So constant goal setting, constant feeling your way through. It sounds like you've got people around you, like nutting it through conversation as well as like bouncing ideas off others. I do like nutting
things through conversation. I talk to my family a lot about ideas. I think at the end of the day, though, I've developed a really serious self-resilience and reliance and process a lot on my own. To be honest, I've really only just cultivated confidence with this style of lifestyle kind of recently. So in the past, it's felt like a bit embarrassing that I haven't been satisfied with where I am. Like, I seem to be moving at such a faster pace than a lot of my friends who are just sort of chipping away at office jobs and like really patiently going about the structures that they're living within. And I just have so much more control over what I'm doing. So I'm able to progress a lot quicker through skill learning and pivoting, and taking on new responsibilities. I can really rapid fire through a year and gain like massive ground in that time. So to keep telling my friends, well, a life that looks so dreamy from the outside in isn't satisfying, I want more, or I want this, or I want that, can be a bit like I've felt a bit embarrassed by that at times. Like, I'm not connecting with my friends on the same level because I'm living like such a completely different lifestyle to most of the people around me. So just lately it's come with like a lot more just gratitude and confidence for the ability to do that, and sourcing people, like-minded people who have the same sort of ability to be responsible for themselves, talking with them, and picking and choosing who I'm talking to.
So getting the right energy that propels you, rather than like having to explain or over-explain how your choices happen.
Also, and not necessarily over-explain, but under-explain. Like, I just wouldn't really talk to them anymore. I'd just stay small, keep these ideas in my head and try to navigate it on my own. But when you open yourself up to like-minded people who are able to do the same things, like, the possibilities grow so much more. You can expand so much bigger. It makes a really big difference.
Yeah. And so how do you find those like-minded people?
That is a great question. Well, other mural painters, like other female public artists, are really great to talk to about it. They understand a lot of the, like we definitely have a sense of camaraderie between the hardships of both communicating in the public realm and the physical side of mural painting as well. Art residencies are great, talking to other creative people about both, about giving value to your own creative ideas and making them as big as you can while navigating the societal structures that we live within that are, you have to work within the system.
Limiting.
But they are limiting at times. So, I might meet an artist that's done environmental science work with a local government, and how did you get permission for that? Who did you talk to? Like, how did you navigate that and actually succeed in that project? Because a lot of the time red tape can stand in the way.
Yeah.
So you just ask a lot of questions, and I really like conferences and any opportunity really to have a conversation with them and see what I can learn from them.
Yeah. And so what is topical for these people at the moment? Like when you think about that, that sort of broader group of people who you might see in your conference world, let's call it, but then even more so that niche world of like female mural painters. Obviously I can imagine there's not a big gang of you. So what is really important to that group at the moment? Like I know through this year, it sounds like so many artists have seen a real shift in the type of work, or even if not the work that they're getting. So I assume that is top of mind, but yeah.
I think a lot of people across the board, not just artists, are talking about the state of the world at the moment. Public artists have a wonderful opportunity. It's a soapbox. Like, you have public space to execute ideas through. A lot of the conversations going at the moment are around environmental issues, political issues, well-being issues, through COVID, mental health, and also the Black Lives Matter movements. There's so many important topics at the moment that for me, I mean, I have always felt this way, but certainly across the board, I'm noticing the public artist isn't putting themselves, the individual, forward anymore. We're speaking on behalf of groups that don't have a voice. I'm really passionate about this. I have been before the bushfires and COVID, but this year more than ever, people are just like crying out to be heard, and we have the creative skills to communicate on their behalf visually, and also the space to execute that, in the public realm. So it doesn't seem appropriate anymore to be putting pretty pictures up on the wall, unless it's an advocate for, taking space and breathing and like creating opportunity of some
joy. People need a break.
Yeah, creating opportunity of like presence and mindfulness within a really busy cityscape. I can see the value of that.
So how do they do that? I mean, it sounds as though if it's not formalized work, because I have this perception, and this is me coming from the outside in, that like art has this opportunity to be a salve at the moment, something that we can reflect with. Yeah, like
I like that.
To just balm you up, to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. But to make sense of all of this distress that's happening around.
Oh, we can't make sense of this.
Yeah, exactly. No, too big of a task. You're right. I don't want to put that on anyone's shoulders.
But to find a sense of camaraderie and like connection through the disconnect. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And it's I feel like through street art, you have this opportunity to create connectivity through everybody who's in that urban setting, to say, noted, that is what I'm feeling, or that is how I'm experiencing this at the moment. So it has this huge power to spark conversations or create feelings for anonymous strangers who are having a shared experience. And yet it's not at the time when maybe companies or governments are paying for that to be done. So does the artist feel like they're responsible to have this voice for a community because it's like a public service, or like how does that feel? How does that come across?
Well, that I can only answer from myself. I can't speak for other artists right now, and I know personally my year has been fraught with so much stress, really,
Mm.
and like pain for the current situation, that actually creating and executing ideas has been very difficult. There have been months where I've had to step back and just focus on something else. So it does take a certain personality to see a problem and just dive head into it and articulate it and execute it in that moment, you know, to be able to translate that. And that is like full-blown activism. That's action, totally action. I'm a bit more of a passive person. I think I'm reflecting and coming back to it when I'm emotionally stable enough.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I do feel a sense of responsibility. That's not necessarily, for me personally, it's not a responsibility to educate people or to change minds. My calling, I feel like, is much more about just connecting, holding space, nurturing. You know, it's a really caring attitude towards the general public. I don't want to create art that makes anyone feel small or attacked or aggressive. You know, even the International Women's Day work I've done, like, I really didn't want to create any work that created a gap between men and women. I want things to be very inclusive. So I'm not great. I guess I'm like not the right personality to be up there shouting all the problems in the world and trying to find solutions for that. It's a bit like, okay, we can acknowledge that there's terrible, terrible things going on. How can we still love each other and like connect underneath that and hold space to carry each other through this pain? Because it's mad, like what we're experiencing on a global scale. Like, we're so isolated from each other and yet more connected, you know, like more connected globally as an earth than ever before. And it's an incredible time that we're living in.
I agree. I mean, and we have this concept called, obviously, post-traumatic stress, but then also this post-traumatic growth opportunity, which you can, you can never say it to people when they're in the moment, when you're at your, and whoever knows if they're at their rock bottom. I said this before, we don't know if we're there now, but when you're in the moment, it's just like, you can't say, come on, Jimmy, pick yourself up. You're going to have a huge opportunity for growth out of this. It's like, come on, it's so patronizing. But from, you know, history, we know that some personality types do flourish through extreme stress.
Absolutely.
Not that you can do that consistently and ongoing, but that if you have a,
But I mean, I feel like this is the crossroads that we were talking about earlier, where it's not a pleasant place to be. To create change, you're forced, like you really are forced to change. And the, you know, days, weeks, months, or years that are leading you to that point of saying no more are hard. Like, they're really tough and full of anxiety and fear and like, you know, being unsure and feeling disconnected. To create great change in your life, you kind of have to be going through a bit of turmoil leading up to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Even in sports, they say, you know, you make the biggest breakthroughs through pain. Like, not pain as in I have a broken leg, but pain as in, wow, I'm really exercising that muscle right now to its discomfort, you know. So
I'm interested in your psychology background. I think I should study it or something, because the brain, I just think our mental capacity to just expand and expand and expand and to keep making space for the hardships, you know, of life, to just continue to grow that big muscle in our head and adapt.
That's why I was just looking back up through your bio, because just as you were speaking, I remember there was this beautiful describing word that you used, and you just had it on display there. So I wanted to come back to it, but I can't scan through. But you definitely did mention like your focus on positive psychology. So I know you've got that interest in how it comes through. That's exactly what you're expressing through your art, is how you just explained it there. Like, how do we shine a light on things that you know, aren't abnormal or in distress? Like, you can show those, but how do you actually be part of the, you know, the opening up, moving to the future? And I do think psychologists have a big role to play here at the moment, maybe as much so as artists or any, you know, any of these groups that are supporting societies.
Right.
Yeah, like I've got in my mind, like government's doing its job right now. Like if ever we needed government, and I know people have their opinion about politics or whatnot, but government is there as this kind of safety net for our infrastructure in my mind. And then you've got, you know, families at the micro level to hopefully, ideally, you know, have those strong connections. But then how you bring in like these sort of more urban elements of humanness at a community level, like I do think we've got a part to play. And psychologists are about showing people that they have resources, that they're not victims all the time.
And I
it's
think
easy to be a victim right now.
The connections in my mind between psychology and my creative practice are that art has always been described to me as the opportunity to show beauty in the world, you know, to like see beauty where other people might not. And psychology for me has been the practice of training my mind to be open to beauty even in times of extreme anxiety and fear and stress. So it's sort of a similar, they really go hand in hand for me. I think it's a full anti-anxiety message. Myself, the individual, as well as the wider audience.
So interesting though, because you could flesh that out from a neuroscience perspective, that people do need, and I can't, even before I say this, I counter it in my mind with this trend at the moment around, what do they call it? Toxic positivity.
Where there's no room for negative anymore.
Exactly.
That's dangerous, isn't it? That's very dangerous.
You need the dark side and the light side, but I do believe that you can guide your thoughts, and not all thoughts. Like we have biology, we have chemistry in our bodies, we have DNA. Those things that definitely play a role. However, like you're training your brain like anything else, and your thoughts are self-directed to some extent. That can be harder for the really ingrained thoughts, but to be able to choose beauty, to choose light, like, you know, versus like who wants to choose pain and ugly? Like you have to acknowledge it and know that it's there. You can't ignore these things.
Those thoughts are so much easier to feed, you know. Like, have you heard that analogy of feeding the wolves inside you? Like you've got two wolves living inside you. One is love and one is fear, and they're fighting, and the one that wins is the one that you feed. I don't know if I've sort of relayed that perfectly, but this concept
makes sense to me. It's stronger.
The more you feed the love and the light, the stronger that animal grows, you know. And I realized probably about 3 years ago that warm thoughts they just float in the back of my brain, you know. They're not very noticeable. They just continue and they do their own thing and they chip away with me. But painful thoughts are right up front. They're really visceral. They're super obvious. I really experience them in a full body way. And I want to, you know, I've been working to switch that around. I want it to be the other way, where the love and the warmth is really filling my body and in me, like in that present state. And the fear ones are a bit more in the background, like, okay, you're there, but I'm not really letting you speak on my behalf.
Sounds like you've done the first part though, which is at least just noting it. Like if you can identify what is a warm feeling and what is a sharp, painful feeling, that's the first part, because you've kind of objectified these things to say, oh, okay, they're kind of like items. They're not me. I don't.
I'm a step back.
Exactly. Whereas when you're in it, it's a very hard.
When you're in it, it's like, I mean, I'm kind of at this place now where when I'm in it, I just need to get through the day. It's like, just breathe, just get through today and tomorrow will be better, and try to get through today without making any decisions. Don't do anything. Just like go to the garden, just be with this and let it process, because tomorrow is going to be easier. And I try not to send any texts to guys or anything like that.
Don't sign any contracts.
Dangerous, but I'm really interested in speaking on behalf of this dark and the light, and I find my art sometimes goes a bit too light or a bit too dark, and I want to keep trying to bring it back into like quite a balance in and to give both sides a voice, because there's no human in the world that doesn't have all of this going on inside of them at once, you know. Like it's that toxic positivity, it just isn't real. There's no need to really create, I guess that's just popular culture and cinema anyway, and the world that we've grown up in does create fictional environments that displays the human condition in a certain way, and we compare ourselves to that. It is toxic. It needs to be explained in the public realm that like humans are so much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Our daily lives are so entrenched with like, you know, your entire life's worth of baggage and conditioning and like just things that we're processing on the daily.
Yeah, it's complicated. And that comes back to your earlier point around vulnerability comes part and parcel with being brave. Like this is the human job if you choose to take it up. And in fact, like being overly positive without recognizing the dark side is a defense mechanism against like the pain of like these things hurt. Being an adult hurts. Like working in this crummy environment right now, it hurts. And it's just not a like, do you wish it on your kid or your friend or no, but like we can survive. It's not a, so for me, like when I hear you say, okay, my go-tos are I go to the garden, or I know not to, like sign anything too important or whatever. Like for me, I have to go back to thinking about my grandparents and my parents. And I think about, okay, like here's some people who, I've got this lovely story of my nana who in the war made a shirt out of ribbon rations, like literally sewed all the ribbons together into a shirt. I don't know where this thing went, or maybe it's like a mystery. Maybe it's one of those like family,
That's what it was like back then though.
That's what I mean. And so when I hear about my stories for myself, I try to be compassionate and say, look, don't downplay it. This is rubbish right now. However, you come from a line of people who can do hard things. So work it out. Like,
definitely. I'm also grateful for a strong line of women in front of me, and learning stories about what their lives were like and the choices that they made, and just really trying to let that sink in, all the things that have happened to lead me to this point in time, and feel gratitude for that.
And it's the gratitude that it shapes your mental, like from a neuroscience perspective, that is literally carving out the streams in your brain to say, okay, when I get to that juncture next time of like, do I go with the painful one or do I go with the warm one? It's like the warm channel is just much deeper, so it's easier to go down that like a river.
I read a great article. Where was that? I feel like it was New Scientist magazine, but maybe it was a bit more mystical than that. Less science-based.
Good every now and then.
I go to both ends of the spectrum, so it's hard to know. But yeah, it definitely did speak about what a fear-based decision feels like compared to a love-based decision. And you can really tune in and sort of think about how it's going to feel if I walk down that path versus that path. And the warmer ones, your whole body just like opens up to it. It's a really incredible experience. And I mean, we talked about finding the right people too, like really recognizing how I feel when I'm around certain people, and just like really spending a lot more time with the people that hold space for me and let me expand instead of helping me feel small.
Restrict. I think that's the wonderful thing about your profession. Like you're using yourself as an instrument to create these expressions, and so by nature you're tuning in to what you're feeling, what you're hearing, what you're experiencing. It's something that I love to bring across into some of our corporate clients who, they're not in this creative space. And so turning on some of that tuned in radio style is really hard. But to your point, it's one of the exercises that we often do is like when you come to a career decision, are you moving towards or are you running away from?
Right.
And of course, we want to be making a decision of like, what am I moving towards? It should be like you say, a love-based decision or a flourishing or a thriving-based decision. Like what is actually going to make me do my best work, satisfy my personal goals, whatever those happen to be, as opposed to am I running away from the things where you're like, I'm going away from that boss, I don't like that salary, that culture, blah, blah, blah. You've got to solve those first before you can work out what you're going towards. Otherwise, you jump from place to place. And
absolutely. Do you think that there's room for that authentic self-expression in the corporate environment? Like, is the culture changing so that you can really find room to like let yourself sing within these like pretty structured spaces where you're interacting with like multiple, you know, you're either working in a team yourself, big or small, or like that team's working with multiple teams, and there's just so many layers. The individual is a much smaller part, like not in a bad way. I think it's a beautiful system. You're working towards something together. I'm on my own, and that's been really hard. You talk about, like, quite romantically talk about that self-expression. That's been really frightening to have that
absolutely
around me. But they seem polar opposite. I feel like I'm standing alone over here, and this is like a real fantastic, like, ant farm of
it's a nice
people
idea.
working together towards something bigger.
And so there's two things, I think. Like, one is how that ant farm is changing, but two is how the whole work system is changing. So we're actually seeing, particularly at the moment, that a lot of the more traditional jobs are breaking down, and that people are moving more towards portfolios like you. So it might not necessarily be creative, but they're saying, I don't just have one company and one job anymore. Either through redundancy or through self-directed shift, we're seeing more people go to, okay, I've got this 3-day-a-week thing. It allows me the flexibility to be with the kids, but then I've also got, you know, this hobby photography thing on the weekends, and I'm, you know, picked up this consulting work these days, and then I'm involved with that charity. So we're seeing people
all of that forward. Like, they're creating like a more realistic picture of their personalities. Oh, that's lovely.
Through these conversations, I'm just hearing so much more of that portfolio career of, like, okay, this is not going to be as stable as I had before, and actually I'd still like my touchstone. If I could have a 3-day-a-weeker, great, because that gives me mortgage paid, kids taken care of, but I can go and have an expression of something that is a bit more for me. So look, I'm talking about very privileged knowledge workers, right? This is of course not the case for everybody. There's, you know, if you're in frontline or in manufacturing, etc., then it's much more traditional. So that's, I would say, a big shift, because companies need less people right now, but they need bits and pieces of really expert tasks done. So it becomes like a bit more, which creates a lot more challenge around project management, teaming, and how the dynamics come together, but it can be really fulfilling because you're not just like check in, check out. The second part I would say is around how the companies are shifting. Like, again, I do think if you're rank and file traditional jobs, blue collar jobs, that is a very different scenario. I can't really speak to it. But in the corporate setting, I have this feeling like we're having this kind of renaissance of people being human.
Whoa!
And like I know.
Your shoulder when you said that. Like,
does anyone hear me? I know. I actually had to think about it.
With this? That's the question.
I know. Is anybody going to tell me that I'm wrong? But I feel like there's this wellspring coming up of people going, work from home threw me into a spin. I've got my kids here. I've got like my kitchen table there. My cats are there. I've got to go get my kid. Like, I'm human all of a sudden. You know, I'm not just a working boss. And even for myself, I noticed I had these standards of professionalism where you turn up like this and you do that, and you would never, I don't know, had all these mysterious imaginary rules. And then now it's kind of like my family knows what my work knows now, and there's no so I feel like in the workplace, people are having much more real conversations. Black Lives Matter has cracked open a lot of unspoken unspeakables that needed to be unearthed in so many cultures. Like, obviously I'm here in the US, it's been just as profound in Australia and around the world. Like, our history is you know, it's up for discussion now, and rightly so. And there's a pain that comes forward with that, and you can't keep that level of pain confined to the street and the home. Like, your work, your pain comes with you where you go. So I hear our clients having tough conversations with their people. Sometimes they open them up and they don't know how to close them back up again. This is not saying that they need to be wrapped up in a nice bow, but
no, but it's such a big, it's
a cracked open.
Yeah, it's not something you can just have like a, you know, an hour brief
chit chat. Great, we solved that. Yeah, exactly. But I think sometimes people are rushing to solve, or like they want to open it up and say we acknowledge, but then like, what do you do with all that rawness? And how do you create space, like you said, for, even if, you know, it's not your personal style, but like sometimes people need space to be angry. This is the moment in time, and rightly so. Anger is the right response. You know, we were having the wrong response before. So so companies, I think, are willing, and it takes a lot more emotional intelligence from leaders, managers, colleagues to have the dialogue. And that's where D&I training was just absolutely failing. But I actually think the people themselves are working it out. Of like,
what is failing? What were you like?
Diversity and inclusion training was just restricted by so much legality and so much politeness of, are you aware of how the brain works? And do you know that you've got these unconscious biases that inflict you? And
you know
come along. Yeah. Do you know that you were programmed by your society? Like, of course we all were. And we still are. That's, you know, that's how your brain works. But so unless there's these really sort of, and I've totally hijacked your conversation, but anyway,
No,
so there's these really profound, I guess you call them diversity, like racism studies from, I think, the 60s and 70s, where this teacher, totally unethical, she couldn't do it today, took these classrooms and split the kids by brown eyes and blue eyes. And one day the brown eyes were the favorites and the blue eyes were the baddies, and then the next day they switch. And she does these, she and it's all recorded, you can watch it on YouTube. It's the most horrendous, like if anyone did that to my child, I swear I would. But that's how people internalize messages of, am I in the in, am I in the out, and then how those groups, you know, relate to each other. So it's all a fabrication. She created it in this classroom setting and just decided who was in and who was out, but then people believe it and internalize it, and then they can start to see how that, you know, plays out in the decades to come. And as tragic as that is, it's that kind of shocking stuff that actually has outcomes for people's behavior, as opposed to, here's your workbook, come and let's talk about how lovely diversity is for an hour. Like, it's, you know, it's not. And you can't get as harsh and as profound and as touching in a corporate environment as what you might need to do if you actually wanted to really see social change.
And reality, the reality of the level that we're at and that we need to comprehend is so graphic. Like, it's so hard to see and hard to feel. There's a really incredible MIA music clip. I don't know if you're familiar with this British rapper MIA. She comes from oh gosh, I shouldn't say too much about her background because I don't know enough about it, but she's got an incredible film clip for one of her music videos where a bunch of like police in SWAT, like a SWAT team, jump out, and they've you've frozen. Is that me?
Oh no, I've still got you.
Okay. They've rounded up all these young teenage boys with red hair and freckles, and they are just like lining them up with guns in their faces, and then they break into an apartment block and just like invade everyone's spaces, just pulling out these like people with red hair and freckles for absolutely no reason other than what they look like. And you kind of watch this film clip unfold and really understand the gravity of like, this is happening every day in so many different ways, and it's so graphic, you know, for us to see because we've never seen it, prejudice against white people in that way. Like, it's really super moving.
It's gut-wrenching. Yeah, exactly. And it's real, and it's not like it's recent. It's just we're all talking and aware, and the shame comes out of not realizing how important that was. I think I saw a lot of things through my female lens and knew that there was invisible forces, places I couldn't go, histories, places I felt safe. Like, I had that lens, but I'd never put myself in someone else's shoes until. So that's the work now. That's the real work.
I just said that, my friend and I were talking about being a woman in the workplace. He's a man, he's the CEO of international business, so really interesting conversations with him. He runs a construction business, so he's like really actively trying to bring more women in, and they've got female apprentices, and like I really love the work that he's doing. But he also reminded me that women are about third in line, and to just look behind me and see all the people behind me, you know, like to sit here and talk about like the prejudices against me and how hard my career has been so far because of that glass ceiling above me. Well, like, just look at all the people behind me and how privileged I've been.
But it's both, isn't it? And I find that challenge is that I definitely, like, because we've just had the anniversary of the right to vote, women's right to vote in the US, and a lot of people are posting
where we are, because it's challenging. Like, it has been challenging.
It's both. Like, it is. This is just this anniversary since we had the right to vote in this country anyway, not myself, but a lot of people, rightly so, have pointed out only white women got the right to vote then. It wasn't until much later that black women got the right to vote. And so it's both. It's like, was there discrimination against women as a blanket statement? Yes. Is there still more so discrimination? Yes. Like, it's not like one or the other. And so,
a challenging time though, that it is a bit frightening having a space in the public realm, because it's very hard not to tread on people's toes now.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
There was like an Instagram movement a couple of weeks ago where we were all posting photos of black and white photos of
I did that. Yeah.
And I loved posting that, and I got like more response than ever before. And it took a lot of guts for me to post the picture that I did and to talk about the work I'd been doing. And I don't usually talk about myself that way, and I felt grateful for that opportunity. And then by the end of that day, it was like, oh no, you're not allowed to do that.
I got totally insta-shamed on that one as well. Yeah.
Like horrified to realize that I'd done the wrong thing. But then also like, okay, like, how do I do this? Like, everyone's talking now in the best way ever. Everyone's talking, all these voices are happening at the same time, and everyone's saying, no, this, no, this, no, this, no, this. It's a really difficult thing to, like, I think actually this is how I felt with the bushfires. There were just like fires coming from all areas, and the gravitas of the situation was just so beyond my comprehension. All those animals, all those plants, just like hundreds of kilometers of national park in every direction. It was so devastating. How do you navigate this? Like, our friend just said, just go small, like just take care of yourself and your family, and like take it day by day. And I don't know, that's not really the answer, because that's not helping the situation necessarily, but this is a really
There's no solution. Yeah, exactly. There is no solution. It's, to your point around the Instagram thing, it's like I was having a parallel experience to you. You see some people come out fighting, and you see other people come out, you know, sort of inquisitive and trying to get to the bottom of the whole story. And I actually felt like that's the first time that I'd gotten involved in dialogue where I was like, the whole point of this thing was women, just supporting women. And then we got clapped back for being frivolous. And then we got clapped back for not knowing what the source of it was. But then the source of it ended up not actually being the source of it. But then as the net result, it did raise awareness to a critical femicide issue. So it's like, who cares about the path to Rome? I don't. And when you get there,
it all happens so quickly, though.
I know, it's like
rapidly,
internet, But within that day, the conversations that I found myself having, and I very rarely weighed in, it was like 2 or 3 conversations back and forth, was like, okay, now here we've landed at understanding that this is about femicide. I don't take my picture down. I still now understand it more. Yeah. But what do you do about it? Like, everyone's so busy arguing about how it got visible, that it's like, and that's what you're saying, is that it's easier to either fight, flight, or freeze, to argue or to not do anything, or to just, you know, step back and take care of your own.
I was like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm not participating in any more social media movements, like, just get in trouble. That's tough.
Yeah. So there is no solution. I think sometimes you have to have a guiding principle of like, here's the things that I believe in, here is my boundary and my protective space, because I know that I'll overexpose myself psychically, and it just, like, I can't do it more. But I also want to be a positive force in my community, I want to share ideas, whatever it happens to be. And I don't know, I just find this is the thing that I feel like, as I hear your story, if you've gone through this process of finding your place to belong, these other people where they get you intrinsically, you have resources you can ask, but you just feel known, that space has a restorative power to it that allows you to go out and fight the good fight sometimes, whether that's environmental or in a, hopefully not a social media storm, but yeah, you get energy from there.
That's really interesting, because I feel like we, as a culture now, we so much energy to this online space that is completely unreliable. It's not safe. You're interacting with people a lot of the time I've never met. You know, I might feel.
Can you imagine being a kid on there?
I might feel a sense of kinship to followers who have been with me for many years and who comment a lot on my work, but I certainly don't know who they are, and I can't trust them to support me, you know, through hard times. And to be putting so much of our energy, like, I've been told as a creative entrepreneur, like, you have to be investing all of this energy into your online platforms and diversifying and, you know, social media and the importance of it. But really, I think the foundations, you talked about community then, connecting with my local community, hearing their stories, sharing my own, supporting each other through hardship. You know, it's something that isn't really broadcasted as an important thing anymore. Sort of grassroots movements they're happening online too. You know, grassroots has moved into the virtual realm as well. It's a really strange time that we live in. And I kept thinking while we were talking about this, you know, that female empowerment movement and things like that, knowledge is key, and the virtual world is moving so quickly, and you have to be so quick to be in it when it's happening. You know, as a business owner, you really need to be jumping on things really quickly. Even once COVID happened, you know, the pressure to like move online and start doing online workshops or educating, switching it up so that I could make an online, like a virtual income. It's risky creating things without a real strong foundation, and moving that quickly as a business owner, it really, you know, creates a very superficial layer of what you're doing, and the wrong review, the wrong, you know, comments.
Yeah.
People can just really rip you apart and shatter that.
Yeah. And it might not even be a person, it could be some bot in Russia or something, who just decided they didn't like whatever, red hats. It brings us on to a good point about your performance reviews, so to speak, because considering that you're in this, I know you're in this, you know, freestyle space, but you are getting so much unfiltered performance input. Just hearing you say that, then it makes me feel like you've kind of got this broad anonymous group who are giving you performance input by likes or comments, or you know, it's very instantaneous. But then hopefully this smaller group of like insiders who you're actually taking sort of more advisory input from. How do you receive that? Because obviously performance reviews in a corporate setting are like, it's everybody's least favorite thing. It's such a palaver of like psychological kind of
performance
overlays.
Reviews in a creative setting, in a corporate setting, performance reviews in a corporate setting are telling you whether you're fitting into that corporate environment well enough. So there's an existing structure that you need to be residing within. And if you're not performing fast enough, or you're not a team player, or you're not, you know, like working towards those same goals, then you have to adjust your behavior. Performance reviews for a creative person is like, you know, are you being authentic enough? Are you communicating truthfully? And are you communicating in the right environment so that the people who need to hear that message are actually listening? Are they present with you? So you can have like the most amazing work in the world, but if you don't show anyone, or it doesn't, you know, this incredible, like a Black Lives Matter mural that's in a black neighborhood instead of a white one. You know what I mean? Like context, you can miss the mark with that execution. So performance reviews for me are mostly positive. If people, like, the nature of a public art is that it connects with people, or they literally just walk right past it. Very few people will engage with your work and then say like, well, I wholeheartedly disagree about this, and I'm going to tell you, like, I'm going to make a point to go out of my way to tell you that I disagree.
You don't get any nanas that stop on the street?
Well, a lot of people talk to me while I'm in the act. Work, so I get to have conversations there, and that there is opportunity to, I mean, you know, men talking with certain men when I was doing the International Women's Day work, and they just don't get it, and you know, they feel confronted. Even they feel like it's an attack on them, even though there is absolutely nothing to do with them, or like, it's just not like that at all. It's just
touches a nerve though.
Yeah. So there have been moments like that in person. Generally, the daily kind of tension that I'm feeling right now is that I really want to be pushing my artwork into a much more sensitive realm, really connecting to the environment, connecting to positive mental health and well-being. That stuff doesn't really translate on social media as well as like rowdy motorcycle helmets, like, hell yeah, go and grab life by the horns. Like, you know, you get these tiny little, like, minuscule moments to catch someone's attention. And the louder, the brighter, the faster, you know, like, you
The more
really,
chance you have.
the more chance you have to grab someone. And then they give you that like, and you get validation, and everything makes sense in the world.
Yep.
Dopamine's
a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. to be using social media as like, it's really not the right vessel to be talking about deeply considered and gentle, like, softly spoken, long burning projects. You know what I mean? The last few days I've been doing this environmental science research residency. I've been really responding to nature and learning stories about the bushfires in my local community. And I've been putting that into my Instagram and getting really good response back in the beginning, but it's starting to sort of, you know, people don't really want to stick with you. I've just got like a nice small, like, you know, 50 or 60 people that have kind of with me on the journey. But I realized that the last few pictures I've posted haven't had like much traction at all as far as likes or responses. And here I'm at this crossroads. It's like, well, do I want to stay safe and continue with like what I've done that isn't serving me soulfully anymore, but I know it gets like validation online? Or do I want to continue down this path that right now doesn't seem like it's like gaining traction, but I know if I stick with it and I gain knowledge and I deepen my experience with it, I deepen the way I'm communicating it, you know, maybe this isn't the right way to really be executing it. It should be film or rap videos, or, you know, like maybe there are other mediums that work better here, and just like process and just mull it over for the next few months and, you know, sit with this. Then by the time I'm bringing it into the public realm, I'm like hitting the nail on the head as far as executing, like communicating.
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, that takes, again, it comes back to this theme of bravery, of being able to hold that integrity for the work, as opposed to the popularity, I guess, or
this morning I like looked back through my last 5 posts and I was like,
what am I being told?
Okay, Bohie, like, what do you want to do here? And I just put in like an old shot of something kind of rowdy that I know people like, just to like keep them, just to filter it in a little bit. But I don't want to silence myself because I'm not getting likes on Instagram, like, especially because I know what I'm talking about is both meaningful for my own healing journey and meaningful for my immediate community, the bushfire. Like, this is important work. I can feel that it's important work. I just need to like let go of the public's approval for now, do what needs to be done. And I know that if I connect well to this concept, people are going to connect to it as well. I just need to,
if you can tap it. Well, it's a really nice segue to the showcase that you wanted to share around the Keep Tassie Wild, which I checked out the website, and it's just such a lovely, lovely business. So for everyone, they're a small profit for purpose business, which I thought was a really nice model. I haven't heard of that before, but makes complete sense once you look at it. They're based in Hobart, which is in Tasmania, and they're focused on preserving the Tasmanian wildlife. So do you want to tell just a little bit about like why they're so compelling? How did you come into contact with them?
Keep Tassie Wild is a really interesting business model where it's run by an artist who was going out into the bush and being inspired by it. And a lot of his work was responding to the Tasmanian wilderness and taking care of it, you know, emotionally and physically. And he realized that he really wasn't giving back to that space at all. Like, a lot of things were happening. He was out protesting and being a part of the conversation, but his art really wasn't nurturing that environment that he was being nurtured by. So he created Keep Tassie Wild. It's just literally, it was patches and stickers. It's now like, t-shirts and like beer koozies. Like, it's not a big concept.
Baby onesies,
And baby, he's had a baby now, that's right. And 50% of all the money that they make goes to other charities. Like, he's not doing the work. He's just the channel. The channel, and it's gained so much traction because it's cool. It's like a really funky little design that like loads of people, especially young adventurers, you know, surfers, mountain bike riders, like people are really happy to represent something that looks good. Even though they're ethically aligned with a lot of these charities, they're not really branded the right way to connect with popular culture, unfortunately. And Josh realized this, and he's just playing this medium between the two. He's selling the products, giving the money away, and now it's getting so much traction. They've raised like over $30,000 just from patches and stickers. Like, it's crazy successful that now the government's coming to him asking like, well, here's some money. What do you want to do with it? And he's like, whoa, there are other organizations that are doing really important work, but now he's being interviewed on the ABC, and he's just been so successful with it, I think. And it really goes to show that you can just look at the skills that you have and ask, how can I use these to better my environment? You know, like, I may only be able to draw cool flowers, you know, I'm not out there, I don't know, saving the world, but how can I use what I have and do what needs to be done?
Yeah. And this is your point around like focus on something that maybe is more local to me, where I can actually see, you know, here's directly my cause. Even though I care about all of that, like, what can I control here in my backyard, literally? Yeah, absolutely. I like it. Thank you. You cottoned me onto them. So I might get myself a patch.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got time, but there's an incredible backstory to how I met Josh. His name's Josh Pringle, the owner of that. I was down in Melbourne while I was studying graphic design. I was the state representative to a design festival down there. And I wagged one afternoon, you know, like I skipped the sessions because I was just super exhausted. It was a really massive week, a big conference, like big talks. And I walked down Fitzroy Street in Brunswick, which is a really cool spot. I'd grown up in Canberra, so Melbourne was just this like unbelievable
the big city. Yeah.
I went into a cool little bookshop and record shop, and I bought a $5 photocopied zine, like tiny little A5, like little book of illustrations. And in the centerfold was handwritten, if you have bought this issue, like this copy, email me and I'll send you an artwork. And it was Josh Pringle, the owner of what has now become Keep Tassie Wild. And we became pen pals. We really had really, obviously I liked his work. I bought his zine for $5. Like, it was the only thing I bought from that shop. And we just started sharing inspiration, and he's really inspired by being out in nature and adventuring. And that was like, I don't know, like 12 years ago, like a really long time ago.
Yeah.
We just continued this really beautiful friendship, sort of like watching each other's careers grow and really supporting each other. And I go down to Hobart to stay with he and his wife, and I've visited his brother in Whistler, and like we've just had this really incredible experience, all from this beautiful little handwritten note in a $5 zine.
It sounds like a perfect way to meet a kindred spirit. Like, if you ever wanted to be like, okay, my kind of person is going to be here in this shop looking at this thing. So I really like that. What a beautiful, beautiful start to a friendship. Well, I'm glad to showcase.
Like, put the word out. Just leave these little
like a message in a bottle.
Presents. And only the people that are going to be like-minded are really going to see them. That's really lovely. I like that.
Yeah, I know. It might be a part of your rethinking of like how to reconnect with people off social media. Some lo-fi ways. Definitely. So let's land. I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions. So if I start the sentence, and if you just give us whatever off the top of your head, I've got 4 questions. So the first one is, and I feel like we've kind of answered this through our whole discussion, the world right now is
cooked. We are cooking. It's not a great place.
Got you.
But there's beauty, I should say. There's beauty.
Yeah. Newton's law, equal and opposites. So I do my best work when?
I do my best work when I'm connected to myself.
Very nice. I want my 102-year-old self to know that ...
that I have lived and laughed and loved.
Fantastic. And finally, my gift to the next guest is?
My gift to the next guest is, it's hard not to say have fun with it. You're going to love this.
Good. That's going to sound funny when I tell them next time, but it sounds like an instruction.
You say that someone else's.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Bohie. So The Real Work was hosted today by me, Alex Lamb, and it wouldn't be possible without the contribution of our whole team here at Lanterne Rouge. product support, or production support, I should say, as well as our product support, comes from Mark Hayes. And that's it for now. So we'll see you at work. Thank you.